Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you had a good break and well refreshed for our next session. Please bear with me for the next hour for us to discuss in a bit more detail on the standard Ijarah documentation that have been initiated by Labuan IBFC. As I've said earlier, there are two versions, and let's start with the basic simplified version as well. If you look at the example here, basically there are only two clauses, namely the definitions and the list. What does the definition covers? Basically, it covers some of the basic terms or basic terminologies that need to be incorporated into the agreement. These are very, very basic, such as business day, month, the asset, whether referred collectively or not, parties to the contract, and also the lease clause or the Ijarah clause. Basically, these incorporate all the Ijarah principles that we have discussed in the previous session. It sets out very clearly what are the party responsibilities, the nature of the benefits, rental rate and asset, the lease period, etc. For all of you who are legal practitioners, I wish to highlight that it may not be remotely impossible. It is also, in other words, it is also possible that you set this out, in a scheduled format. For example, if you think that as far as the parties' responsibilities are concerned, beside the basic clauses that have been covered under the documentation, you want to add additional responsibilities, you can put that either in the main body of the document itself or through schedules. Similarly, the nature of the benefits of the asset, the rental rate, as well as the lease period and terms governing it. However, the way the standard document is formatted is that you have these two basic components, and then in order to accommodate most of the standard clauses from BIMCO, you can insert that in the schedule. These are, for example, terms I've mentioned earlier: arbitration clause, governing clause. These are very useful terms that have been standardized by BIMCO, especially for assets similar to ships or aircraft. So the evidence document affecting the Ijarah contract, whether in terms of the title or the grant, the ownership documents of the asset has to be agreed and incorporated as part of the term. For example, if you have entered into the agreement before gaining ownership, as asked by one of the ladies just now, so perhaps you can provide in the terms of the contract that the identity documents will be part and parcel of the agreement and will be appended to the parties respectively based on the agreed time. So that has to be tailored according to the underlying asset and based on case by case. When it comes to evidence documents, there must be proper evidence documents by way of notice or other format of documents to clearly evidence the receipt of the asset, whether by the lessee or later on, if it is an Ijarah or a lease ending with ownership, when it is passed back to the lessee as owner. The promissory note, this is to be issued after signing the Ijarah agreement to acknowledge rental amount and the promise to pay, if any, especially if it is for a future date. Undertaking by the lessee for personal use of the Ijarah asset if there is no permission for subletting, especially, so that undertaking has to be there. And also undertaking to purchase the lease asset at the end of the tenure, whether earlier by way of occurrence of trigger events that requires the lessee to purchase the asset outright rather than continuing to rent it. In this respect, you must remember that there is a maxim, there's a principle in Sharia that says you cannot enter into two buying or two transactions in one contract. What is meant by this is that, for example, hire purchase. Largely speaking, ijarah can also be used for the purpose of hire purchase. In the more accurate ijarah term, it is called ijarah thumma al-bai', ijarah ending with a buy, ending with a sale, or ijarah muntahiyah bitamlik, ijarah ending with ownership, a lease ending with ownership. Bitamlik means ending with ownership. Although this structure or this arrangement is permissible, but from Syariah perspective, each of these contract, which is the hire and the purchase, must be separately contracted. In other words, must be separately documented, and both contracts have to fulfill independently all the Syariah parameters applicable to that type of contract. For example, for ijarah, it must fulfill all the terms and conditions of an ijarah first before you enter into a sale contract, which is at the end of the ijarah tenure. And similarly, for the sale to take place at the end of the ijarah tenure, it must fulfill all the Syariah conditions for a valid sale. There are various types of sale in Sharia that you can opt for, but it has to be complied with separately and independently from the ijarah itself. So you cannot, for example, combine or come up with a hybrid. A lot of innovators in the modern era likes to consider themselves as creators of hybrid without being fully aware that there are limitations of having hybrids in Sharia because of the various parameters I've mentioned just now. You know, for example, the gharar, uncertainty, that is not permissible by Sharia. So you cannot at will or at liberty freely try to do a hybrid. It has to comply with the Sharia parameters, and in particular with the specific type of commercial contracts, muawadat, that you are entering into. Yeah? So this has to be carefully observed and noted. If you look at the especially the conventional lease practice that are prevalent in Labuan, it is quite straightforward, just like any hire purchase contract or lease contract that you have seen out there in the market, and it does not have this additional component that are more typical in the practice of ijarah business. Firstly, the service agency agreement, under which the lessee is appointed by the lessor as a wakil. Of course, in Malaysian we are familiar with the word wakil. It literally means agent. The lessee is appointed as a wakil or agent by the lessor to carry out the required services or maintenance of the asset. For example, if the lessee just now is leasing or renting the ship, the lessee, being in control, being in possession, being using the benefit of that ship, has the duty as an agent of the owner to maintain that ship. If you are renting a building, you have the duties as an agent to do the service of the building, maintain it regularly to ensure it is fit and proper for usage. Although in the first place, we have already illustrated that the ownership, risks and liabilities lie with the owner, with the lessor. But because he is not in possession or in control of the underlying asset, it is in control or in possession of the lessee. Under Sharia, there must be proper contract to delegate this obligation, and this is where the service agency agreement comes into place. In fact, under the service agency agreement, there is an obligation, or there is a term or a clause commonly applied in the service agency agreement, that the lessee, being a mere agent, the lessor is the principal, the lessee will have to be compensated for the cost that it has incurred to carry out the required services and maintenance of the asset. Again, this is a cost that has to be incurred by the lessor, being the owner. So you don't have to do it by yourself in maintaining the asset, but even if when you delegate it to the agent, to the lessee, the cost must still be incurred by you. So what happened in the marketplace, at least for the past few years, is that, for example, banks, when they lease out properties or assets to customers, they will enter into this service agency agreement, appointing the customer as wakil to maintain that property. At the end of that financing period, they will reimburse the cost of that maintenance by the customer by way of set-off against the financial obligation. So it may not be reimbursement by way of cash, it can be a reimbursement by way of set-off, but still you have to reimburse it. In other words, there is no Shariah debate about it. You have to incur that cost since you are the owner. We go back to the basic principle, al-ghurum bil-ghunum, gain is justified by taking risk, risk of liabilities of ownership. Takaful, especially because a lot of these high valued assets need to be covered by insurance. In fact, especially for ships, aircrafts, even to a certain extent copyrights, or other intellectual properties, you may have already, as an owner, taken insurance cover on those assets that would ensure that you will be adequately covered against inherent risk in that asset. However, if you have not taken and you want throughout the tenure of the lease for the lessee to temporarily cover the risk of that asset, in other words, they are the one who paid the contribution, the premium, you can do that by way of assignment of that insurance or takaful policy. However, the proceeds of that takaful policy will be to your benefit. These are the terms that will be set out in the assignment of the insurance or takaful rights attached to the asset, whereby on the one hand, the duty or responsibility to pay the premium or contribution lies with the lessee because they are the one who maintains it, who utilize it throughout the tenure. But should any damage happen or any insurable event happen that trigger the proceeds of the insurance or takaful to be paid out, it is the lessor who will benefit from that payout. Thirdly, the mortgage document, especially for owners who only have beneficial rights or beneficial title, beneficial ownership of the asset. This is almost very typical, especially in the case of automotive financing in Malaysia, ITAB, Al-Ijarah Thumma Al-Bai', whereby it is the customer who ordered the car from the dealer. The grant is issued in the name of the customer. However, based on the hire purchase contract or the ITAB contract, the actual beneficial owner is the financier, which is the bank. So you need to register at the JPJ, the Road Transport Department, your mortgage or your encumbrance, your interest on the title of the vehicle. So similarly, besides having that access or that avenue to register the mortgage or encumbrance on the title of the goods or service underlying asset at the respective registry. For example, if it is a ship, then you register at the ship registry. If it is an aircraft, you register at the aircraft registry. If it is a vehicle, automotive vehicle, you register at the Road Transport Department. If there is none, whatever is the underlying ownership document, for example, the bill of lading, the invoice, the copyright documents, you have to separately come out with a mortgage document to register your encumbrance on, or to document your encumbrance on those assets, so that there will be clear separation between you as beneficial owner who have a claim or right over those ownership with the party, the lessee, who is actually in possession or in control. In fact, the legally registered party to the document, to the ownership document. So mortgage document also is important. Although it is not in the first place part and parcel of the ijarah contract or ijarah component. These are your security documents, so to speak. And then assignment of manufacturer's warranties attached to the asset. Again, this is especially very crucial for manufactured assets which are of high value, such as ships, aircrafts, and maybe heavy machineries, which are tailored specifically to the request of the hirer or to the lessee. So you can imagine if the warranties are not there and you as owner cannot benefit when there is a damage. So it will be very damaging or very risky as far as financial loss is concerned for you. So proper assignment of warranties when the asset is legally registered in the name of the lessee, but beneficially is owned by the lessor, is very important to document this properly. Now we move forward to the various form of ijarah. The gentleman in front has asked about the forward lease just now, whether it is doable or permissible. The answer is yes. And this is why I would like to share with you some of the syariah principles that govern ijarah, whether present or forward ijarah, and how are they similar or different from conventional leasing. And by the end of this session, hopefully you would understand what are the value and business propositions for Islamic leasing vis-a-vis conventional leasing, especially because there are peculiar or specific areas where these two are clearly distinguished. There are various forms of ijarah. What literally means ijarah, of course, is lease. Any present lease is an ijarah. However, they are, as far as the market practice is concerned, the most popular type of ijarah is ijarah thumma al-bai', or also known as ijarah muntahiyah bitamlik. Literally, this means ijarah thumma al-bai' literally means ijarah ending with a bai', which is a sale. Ijarah muntahiyah bitamlik literally means ijarah ending with ownership bitamlik. So this is very similar to Islamic hire purchase. If for example, the underlying asset is a motor vehicle, largely speaking, this under the Malaysian law would fall within the coverage of the Hire Purchase Act 1967, because the first schedule there prescribed very clearly what are the types of assets that will be governed by Hire Purchase Act. Those which are not under that first schedule, broadly speaking, they would fall under lease ending with ownership. They are not strictly governed by Hire Purchase Act, therefore you are at liberty to negotiate your terms. You are not required to follow prescriptively the requirement of the Hire Purchase Act, although you can opt by contract to comply with those requirements. But in principle, you are not required by law to comply. You can negotiate, but the structure is there. In more recent years, this is not more than 10 years ago since Islamic banking and finance or Sharia compliant transactions first come to the Malaysian shore, we have seen a variation of ijarah, which is called ijarah mangsufah fil azimah, or Islamic forward lease, and ijarah mudhafah ila mustaqbal. Ila mustaqbal literally means future, to the future. So ijarah, which is future lease. There is a very thin differentiation between fi dhimmah and ila mustaqbal. We'll see it later on. But basically, both of them are for the future, whereby rental payment is paid in advance, but the underlying asset is delivered in the future. Ijarah can also be arranged together with other type of commercial concepts, other muawadat such as ijarah and plus istisna. Istisna basically is a forward sale, whereby you pay the price early, but you take delivery of the asset in the future. it is different from, for example, other type of sale under Syariah such as buy bithaman ajil or murabahah, whereby you take delivery of the asset first, but payment is made in the future. Yeah. So ijarah and istisna can be combined as a form of structure, yeah, although both must comply with the separate Syariah parameters applicable to them, whereby the lessor can request the lessee to construct the ijarah asset. This again comes back to the type of assets such as properties, ships, aircraft, the heavy machineries that have to be manufactured according to very, very high standard and specifications to satisfy the requirement of the customer or the lessee. And because of that, there are various factors that are more complicated than simple ijarah that has to be taken into consideration. And in this aspect, you will need very careful legal and Syariah advice from advisors before you embark on it. Other than that, you can combine ijarah or lease with rahnu or collateral or mortgage, whereby on the one hand you lease out the asset, on the other hand you also pledge it out, whereby the asset can be parked with the lessee as a collateral. In addition to secure the rental, the rahnu can secure any other amount agreed. Yeah. So on top of the rental itself, you can secure other amount. For example, personal debt of the lessee that you want to guarantee under the rahnu. Yeah, you can add that. Hamish jidyah or security deposit, you can combine a lease with the concept of security deposit, whereby besides having a rental obligation, the customer or the lessee also have to pay a deposit to secure for the lease. Yeah, the deposit is used to secure the wa'ad or unilateral undertaking to lease the asset. In other words, the lessee pay upfront the deposit so that the lessor would not lease the asset to other parties. Yeah, that's why you put a deposit upfront. If the deposit, if the lessor decides to proceed with the rental, then the hamish jidyah or the security deposit can be calculated as part of the rental payment. If he decides to part away or not to proceed with the rental, then the security deposit can be forfeited by the owner. The deposit also can be used, or by way of contractual terms, you can set it out that it can be used to compensate actual losses or even be treated as part of the payment, in the manner that I've illustrated just now. Besides that, I've mentioned that they cannot be gharar by way of undisclosed costs, additional fees, unilateral revision of terms, that you can compound interest or impose penalties that will be unfair to the lessee or the lessor. Therefore, the only permissible additional gain besides the rental income that you can charge is ta'wid. Literally means compensation. This is for any actual loss borne by the lessor, and it can be treated as an income to the lessor. Yeah. And secondly, there is a type of payment, it is called gharamah or penalty, which cannot be treated as an income to the lessor. It is only imposed as a penalty or as a deterrent to the lessee, so that he will not default. But if he default, you will impose discharge on him, and you will not recognize it as an income. You will channel it to charitable bodies. Why? Because you have obtained back your rental. So in other words, there is no actual loss other than opportunity loss on your part. You cannot gain anything more, which is considered riba. The penalty can only be channeled to charitable bodies as permitted by your Syariah advisors. That is the broad categorization of ijarah. Let us look further into ijarah masufah fil azimah, which is a forward lease, which means that the rental payment is paid in advance the lessee agrees to pay the rental in advance before taking delivery of the asset. Perhaps the asset is not ready yet or not fit for usage yet, but he wants to pay early in order to lock in the asset, ensure that he gets the right pricing for it. That's why he agrees to pay advance rental payment. In this respect, for ijarah mansufah fi al-zimmah, broadly speaking, especially in the market practice, this refers to a lease where the asset is not yet in existence or completed, or the asset is not ready for use. In other words, not fit yet for purpose, has to be serviced or repaired before it can be delivered. However, there is no doubt, because the lessor has run this business for many years, and there's no doubt that he will be able to deliver the asset and its benefit. In other words, he has a lot of stocks. If he cannot deliver on this particular one, he can deliver others which are of equal quality. In other words, the asset and the benefit, the commitment for the lessor to deliver the asset and benefit, there is no uncertainty about it, no gharar about it, and he commits to that. In this respect, from Sharia perspective, although there is a general rule in Sharia which says that just now you cannot sell or let go, rent out anything that you have not owned yet or are not able to deliver, but this type of contract is considered as an exception, whereby you do have the degree of certainty of ability to deliver that asset. From Sharia perspective, this carries similar weightage to bai' salam or forward sale or istisna, whereby the delivery will take place in the future, and it has been permitted by Sharia scholars. So as the benefit of the asset is to be delivered in the future, it will be the liability of the lessor to ensure that the asset gets delivered. In other words, the lessee is always at liberty to seek compensation from the lessor if the delivery does not take place. That you have to bear in mind. Considering that the lessor is committing to prepare the asset or manufacture the asset or obtain possession of the asset in order to meet the expectation of the lessee at the consideration of the rental income, the lessee must agree to eventually see out the lease period. He cannot basically decide that although the asset is going to be delivered in the future and they have agreed on that, suddenly he walk away on the basis that, oh, there's no opportunity cost to you. Cannot. Of course, in this respect, the Sharia acknowledged that the lessor has already would have already incurred costs or expenses to prepare the delivery of the asset, which are either in construction or being repaired, to the lessee. So the lessee, in the case of ijarah mansufah fi al-zimmah, notwithstanding that he pays the rental early, must also agree to eventually see the lease period out, and his commitment to pay the rental advance, the rentals in advance, must be observed until he gets the use of the asset. He cannot backtrack on that promise. If he has promised to pay early, he must again meet the punctual payment early, notwithstanding that the asset has not been delivered. Commercially, this type of ijarah has been popular in the market to ensure that the asset owner or the manufacturer of the niche type of asset, whether ship, aircraft, heavy machineries, properties, has access to sufficient funding to construct or manufacture or produce the asset, because the rental payment has been paid early. So you can use that cash flow to complete the asset. And the customer, to this extent, commercially would have advanced access to such asset, considering that it may be scarce in the market. It's difficult to get. For example, property, to get in that location very difficult. So you want to lock in early at that price. So you can do that by way of this ijarah mansufah fi al-zimmah, and therefore minimize your cost, minimize your risk of the scarcity or high demand for such asset, especially if you already have commitments or plans to use it for your own commercial purposes later on. If it is for the purpose of speculation just now, as I mentioned earlier, you cannot over leverage, you cannot speculate to the extent of hoarding or being anti-competitive to the market. That also you need to be careful about. The liquidity from the funding will facilitate the lessor to complete or produce the asset, and as the rental is paid in advance, should he fails to deliver, the lessor fails to deliver the asset for usage by the lessee within the agreed timeline or the extended agreed timeline, then the lessor must reimburse the advance payment to the lessee. In fact, the lessor may also be obliged to pay compensation if there are genuine loss on the part of the lessee, because he has committed his resources there, and for example have to rent out other properties. You need to carefully consider the compensation for the lessee. Ijarah mudhafa ila mustaqbal is slightly different, very thinly different, in the sense that the contract is for an already existing asset. Just now it was for an asset which is under construction, being repaired or being manufactured, being built. But here it is already an existing asset, but the delivery of the asset is still taking place in the future. Okay. This again, depends very much on the commercial factors that the lessor and the lessee agree. Maybe because, for example, to take the let's say second-hand ship or second-hand aircraft, it's already there. You already want to lease it out, but you are not ready yet to take delivery because the dock to take delivery of the ship is not ready, or the airport to accommodate, let's say A380 is yet to be ready. So the delivery has to take place in the future, but you lock in the ijarah today. So this type of ijarah is called future ijarah or ijarah mudhafa ila mustaqbal. The rental payment can be varied, subject to mutual consent of the parties. You can, for example, partially pay in advance and later on in the future, and vice versa. The rental can commence at the future date when the lessee enjoy the usufruct, or the lessee may impose advance rental which as a sign of commitment. In this respect, very similar to Hamish Jidiah just now, security deposit to commit to the rental. For delays in delivering asset, what happen when it comes to ijarah mudhafa ila mustaqbal? Just now, delays may happen under ijarah masufa fi azimah because of incomplete asset, or the production is stopped, or the construction has ceased. But here we are talking about assets which are supposed to be ready. So the parties can agree in the terms of the contract whether for the lessee to have the right not to pay the rental in the delay period, or the lessor can deduct any advance rental proportionately to allow easing to the lessee, or the lease period is extended according to the date the asset is going to be delivered. So there are accommodation there according to the discussion or negotiation of the parties. Coming back to ijarah thumma al-bai', which is the most popular type of ijarah so far, most commonly used very similar manner to hire purchase, conventional hire purchase, as governed by Hire Purchase Act 1967. One of the issue that we need to be careful with compared to hire purchase or conventional hire purchase is the fact that, like I said from the beginning, the sale and the actual transfer at the end of the period must be properly contracted and documented, complying with both pillars of Sharia or parameters of Sharia for two separate contracts. There are many ways to finally transfer the asset at the end of the lease period. The first option is by way of sale, which means that you need to enter into a separate contract of sale. Let's say at nominal value of RM1 or $1, you contract at consideration of RM1 to sell the asset at the end of the tenure. Or it may also take place by way of hibah or gift, unconditional gift or benevolent gift, by way of a mere transfer, direct transfer. I agree to give this away to you since you have observed all your rental payment punctually. I enter into a contract to give this as a present to you. So that also has to be properly documented. It cannot be assumed, because there will be gharar or uncertainty at the end of the lease period. It has to be properly documented. For bai', there will be separate syariah conditions to comply with. For hibah, there will be separate syariah parameters to comply with. So you need to be very careful of this, especially taking into consideration also that a gift being a unilateral action or unilateral promise, whereby promisor promise to give or present the asset to the promisee at no consideration. Fundamentally, this basically means it is not bilateral contract, because no consideration. You must remember, under Contracts Act, a complete contract must have offer, acceptance, consideration, subject matter. So there's no consideration here. With all due respect, from legal and Sharia point of view, a hibah contract will be treated slightly different from a commercial contract, because there's no consideration. That's why the documentation, for example, you need to be very careful about it. I have come across lawyers who are not well versed or not well advised. When they prepare a hibah contract, they insert a clause there that says at the consideration of RM1 or at the consideration of $1. I give this away, or I present this as a hibah to the lessee. It is fundamentally wrong, because it is not a hibah. A hibah cannot be with consideration. But the lawyer in the first place, thought that he is brilliant, because he is aware that all contract, for it to be enforceable, has to be with consideration. So he just put there, he actually advised the customer, hey, without consideration, not proper contract, you cannot enforce. And so without being aware that actually he has transgressed the Sharia requirement applicable to hibah, which is at no consideration, which is why he needs to be very careful, needs to be very aware. How do you come up with a document of hibah that is enforceable? How? Under the common law, because we apply common law in Malaysia, for an undertaking or a covenant to be enforceable, although it is made unilaterally without consideration, among others, there are of course many jurisprudential debate and discussion on this, but among others, it has to be by way of deed poll, right? For example, you can create a trust deed, you can declare a trust unilaterally without consideration and even without beneficiary in existence in the first place. You declare a trust, you sign unilaterally, that trust is enforceable under the law, no problem. Which is why, in my case, I will advise my client who decides to do an ijarah thumma al-bai' or ijarah bitamlik by way of hibah, I will advise them to document that hibah by way of a deed poll. This letter of hibah is executed as a deed. Settle. You cannot out of nowhere put in a $1 consideration or $100 consideration. That is wrong and still unenforceable, although you thought it is. Okay? Remember that under the Hire Purchase Act, you have this option whereby you actually have the option to purchase the underlying asset at the consideration of RM1. That is documented under the Hire Purchase Act, as well as the prescribed hire purchase document under the Hire Purchase Act. The option is given at RM1, and that's why at the end of the hire purchase tenure, you have the option to purchase the asset, and the automotive vehicle will be transferred to you. But that option component, whether most of my colleagues, my learned colleagues from the legal practice notice or not, that option component does not exist in ITAP, because you cannot combine. You cannot combine hire purchase or ITAP concept in ijarah, whereby you have the option to purchase at the consideration of RM1 that option is not recognized. Okay, you must agree. On the one hand, you have this ijarah agreement, these are the terms, these are rental payment, these are lessee lessor, and there's no uncertainty or gharar terms on the ijarah contract. On the other hand, you have a separate contract, whether by way of sale or by way of hibah, to agree that transfer of asset will take place at the end of the ijarah term. So that has to take place separately, not by way of an option at consideration. No. Okay, so I've explained just now that it has to be by way of sale or by way of hibah. An innovation that has taken place in very recent years in ijarah thumma al-bai' is a conditional hibah or hibah bersyarat. Hibah that comes with a condition. The condition is very simple. The condition is that if you observe your ijarah payment terms punctually and diligently as contracted under the ijarah, at the end of this ijarah term, I undertake to hibah this to you, to give away this asset to you as a hibah. In other words, it is automated. On the one hand, this minimize the tracking process or the documentation process for ijarah thumma al-bai', because otherwise, if you have to again enter into a separate contract at the end of the ijarah period, or enter into a separate hibah letter at the end of the ijarah period, you know, especially if the tenure of the ijarah or tenure of the lease is very long, 10, 15, 30 years, who is going to track when actually and how are you going to track when actually the transfer has to take place? By having a document called conditional hibah, basically you minimize that tracking obligation or tracking process, because it is automated. The hibah is a conditional hibah whereby you automatically give away the asset to the customer or to the lessee, but provided that he fulfills the term and condition. As long as he has not fulfilled the terms and conditions, the hibah does not take effect. Okay, so just to highlight this to you, to be fair, this practice of conditional hibah, at least from my experience, I have not seen it very, widespread yet. Like I said, lawyers need to be very careful in documenting their hibah document. And therefore, it is on the one hand, it is a useful solution to minimize tracking cost and tracking process for ending an ijarah with a transfer. But on the other hand, you need to ensure that the documentation is properly done, because it has to fulfill the appropriate syariah parameters for hibah. So just to illustrate in more detail how ijarah thumma al-bai' takes place in the market, especially for financing purposes, just like hire purchase, conventional hire purchase. What happens is that the financier agrees to enter into an ijarah thumma al-bai' arrangement and lease the asset to the customer. Let's say the customer goes to the dealer, identified a motor vehicle to purchase, put in the booking fee. He has not put in the deposit yet for the purchase. He actually put in a booking fee for the motor vehicle. He informed the financier that he wants the financier to finance the purchase of that motor vehicle, and under the Hire Purchase Act, especially after the amendment 2011, it is the financier who has to fully pay the dealer the amount of the purchase price. So no deposit is taken by the dealer. All deposit, even if it is taken by the dealer, is considered taken on behalf of the financier, because financier is the actual owner of the vehicle, not partial owner, not 10% already paid by the customer, 90% is paid by the financier, and therefore 90% owned by the customer. 90% owned by the financier, 10% owned by the customer. Cannot. It has to be fully owned. Then only you can lease out. So any deposit paid will be considered as paid to the dealer on behalf of the financier, and it will be part and parcel of that purchase price. The financier then Number 2, there, the customer pays the agreed rental rate to the financier within the prescribed time period for a proportional value of the asset. In other words, it will be decreasing as the years goes on. At the end of the agreement, the purchase price of the asset is paid, whether by way of a sale contract or by way of a hibah document. And at that point, the financier transfers ownership of the asset after the agreed purchase price of the asset has been fully paid, as well as all the rental. In this respect, I wish to reiterate the importance that the arrangement of the contract, the execution must be according to the correct sequence. What has very often happened in the marketplace is that, you remember, you have two sets of contracts here for Ijarah Thumal Al-Bai', i.e. the Ijarah contract, which is the lease, and the sale contract, which is the transfer at the end of the period. What has quite often happened for those who are not in the aware or who are ignorant of these Sharia rules, they have executed both documents simultaneously for convenience. Since I'm just too busy, I want to execute both documents today and just proceed with the transaction. The problem is the Sharia law or the Sharia principle does not allow you to do so. Why? Why does it require you to only execute it according to sequence? It goes back to the fundamental, which is to remove gharar. If you execute both sale and purchase agreement at the same time, which one comes first? How can you ijarah something that you have sold out to the lessee? And similarly, how do you lease something that has been sold? You have to have ownership, then only you can lease. Similarly, only after the rental payment has been fully observed, then only you want to transfer out the asset. So the sequence must be correctly executed, at least or at the minimal. Although you execute it at the same time or at the same day, there must be a time stamp that differentiate which ones come first, which ones come later. So that has to be properly documented, again, just for the benefit of my learned legal practitioners. In this aspect, the lessor can request the lessee to give a binding promise or wa'ad mulzim, we call it, to purchase the asset upon termination by breach or default. So on the one hand, I have agreed to lease the asset, but I have never agreed to purchase the underlying asset prior to the expiry of the tenure. That has to be separately undertaken by way of a promise or by way of a wa'ad mulzim. The contracts then, therefore, can be pre-signed, but parties must ensure that the correct sequence are observed, and this is where the timestamp again, will be crucial. So, besides all the regular requirements of ijarah as we have discussed in the first session, in ITAB, you must be aware that the agreement must conclude with a transfer of ownership at the end or during the period of the rental if it is settled earlier, or terminated earlier. All rental payment and installment will have to be paid in entirety unless the lessor decides to waive that payments. Finally, the transfer must be concluded or affected by a new independent contract. It cannot be hybrided or incorporated as part and parcel of the ijarah itself. Ijarah is just for lease. In case, let's say, the tenure is quite long, the asset has suffered from wear and tear, and eventually the lessor is unable to transfer the ownership of the property to the lessee due to various circumstances. Let's say the asset is irreparably damaged. What happened? At the end of the ijarah period, despite the lessee having paid a higher rental rate to own the asset, the lessor must review and adjust that rental rate accordingly for his inability to deliver the asset to be transferred, all payments above the normal market rental rate has to be returned to the lessee. In other words, you cannot deliver the asset, you must reimburse for the payment that is not due to the sale. Yeah? If this happened before the maturity date, the lessee is entitled to regain back all payments besides due rent made to own the property. So all payments associated with owning the property, for example, the sale consideration just now, has to be reimbursed because the sale will not take place. In other words, the sale is frustrated by non-delivery of the asset. So to this extent, I have to reiterate that, unsurprisingly, you may find a lot of similarities between ijarah and conventional leasing as far as the structures and documentation are concerned. So if you are already familiar with conventional ijarah, you should be happy that it is not, a new animal, an unknown animal to you. It's just probably with different colors or slightly different eyebrows. So not totally different species. Yeah. So you can see here that ijarah and conventional leasing usually set out the maximum period of 7 years and have flat fixed rate time for the calculation of installment. Both may commonly outline similar maintenance responsibilities between the parties, whether maintenance associated with ownership or maintenance associated with utilization of the asset. And as far as the Malaysian legal framework is concerned, both financing instruments generally, especially for motor vehicle, will be governed by the Contracts Act as well as the Hire Purchase Act. In this respect, even the stamp duty applicable will be very similar between ijarah and hire purchase. Between a regular ITAP and conventional hire purchase, the transfer of the asset will occur at the end of the agreement period, whether due to expiry of the tenure or earlier trigger events. Both the instruments are particularly suitable for high cost asset, high value asset, the tailor-made asset as required by the lessee. Both instruments are also open to the prospect of a sublease, which then must not exceed the principal lease period, and of course will be subject to additional terms that, as I've mentioned earlier, such as anti-competitive behavior, hoarding. This is where, if I may conclude at this point, the value and the business propositions for Islamic leasing compared to its conventional counterpart is the fact that it expands your customer base, especially in Malaysia. In Malaysia, we already have the right size, the right market, the highly demand for Sharia compliant instruments. This may not be yet the case for many other jurisdictions, but it's already the case in Malaysia, and we hope that as Islamic businesses continue to be internationalized, the market will expand slowly but surely. This expands the customer base of your business. It caters for those who are inclined and committed towards abiding by Sharia rules and principles. It must be remembered that it does not, this type of contract does not restrict the application or the parties only to those who are inclined towards Sharia. You can be a conventional leasing company and still, or conventional bank and still do ijarah, no problem. Especially in Malaysia, with all due respect, the majority of businesses who have been utilizing Islamic financial instruments include non-Muslim population in Malaysia, and it is very commercially driven and viable. So in other words, you can tap both conventional and Islamic market. Other than that, ijarah being Sharia compliant would allow you to optimize the capacity of the market to unlock the full potential of Sharia compliant asset. In other words, if all this while you did not realize that you have in your pool of assets, Sharia compliance assets, which can be leveraged on by way of ijarah. If you had leverage on it to be used for ijarah financing, for ijarah activities, you would have earned additional rental income. So this would unlock your potential of Sharia compliance asset for the fact that your lessee market may come from both conventional and Sharia compliant lessee, as long as it complies with the parameters of Sharia as explained in the first session. And then ijarah will open more doors towards recognition and receipt of Sharia compliant income, as usury free or interest free. This is especially for Sharia compliant businesses who wants to diversify their range of income. Perhaps all this while they have been reliant more on investment income or sales income. Yeah, so rental income is a diversification of their portfolio. Ijarah portfolio also can be packaged as underlying asset for sukuk, for Islamic securitization, which, with all due respect, under the strict Sharia principles and interpretation, cannot be the case for murabaha or bai' bithaman ajal. In other words, for sale contracts, because it is a pure sale, whereby the remaining obligation under that sale are purely receivables. In other words, they are debts or they are credits. This cannot be repackaged for securitization purpose because it has become purely financial assets. Yeah. But for ijarah, although you still have debt or receivables, but at the same time it is backed by an underlying physical asset which is being rented. Yeah. So that ijarah can be repackaged for purpose of securitization, and this again allow you more access to liquidity, arguably. Yeah. During my previous similar session on this standardized document, there was a question whether ijarah can be used for the purpose of financial lease. And for, in this respect, I would like to just validate and verify that question by looking into the accounting treatment for financial lease. If you look at IAS 17 and FAS 17, yeah, on IAS stands for International Accounting Standards. What are financial lease? Financial lease are those lease where firstly ownership of the asset is transferred to the lessee at the end of the lease term. Is it the case for ijarah? Yes, if it is an ijarah sumal bai' or muntahiyah bil tamlik or sumal bai'. Yeah. Does it contain a bargain purchase option to buy the equipment at less than fair value of the market? It does contain that bargain, yeah, although not by way of specific option, yeah, but it does allow the lessee to buy the asset at less than fair market value because he has already been paying the rental income earlier. The lease term is for major part of the economic life of the asset, even if the title is not transferred. Yes. At the inception of the lease, the present value of the minimum lease payment amounts to at least substantially all of the fair value of the lease asset. So the agreed contracted rental amount is almost like paying the actual purchase amount. Yeah. That is again very similar to ITAP. Finally, the lease assets are of a specialized nature such that only the lessee can use them without major modifications being made. Only the lessee can use. He cannot freely sublease to others. So based on this standard, it does fit into the purpose of a financial lease. But if you go into much detail, for example, if the question is whether you can also use financial lease as the underlying asset, the answer is no. Yeah? So as long as the asset use is a physical asset, including, for example, copyrights or IT solutions that can be used physically, then it complies with IAS 17. My only reservation is that under IAS 17, when they talk about ownership of the asset, they may cover both financial and non-financial asset. Yeah? So if it is non-financial asset, that is the case for ijarah, sumal bai', and therefore it complies with finance lease. But if you are referring to actual financial asset, namely debt, receivables and whatnot, it will not satisfy IAS 17. Yeah? Similarly, the FAS, as used in the American Financial Accounting Standard, which has lesser objective tests. Firstly, ownership of the asset is transferred to the lessee at the end of the lease term. Yes. Contains a bargain purchase option. Yes, a bargain purchase, but not by way of option. Yeah. And then lease term is equal to 75% or more of the estimated economic life of the leased property. In most circumstances, it will be the case because of the price of the rental. Yeah. And then present value of minimum lease payment, including any profit thereon, equals or exceeds 90% of the excess of the fair value of the this property. So this is pretty much dependent on the fair value of the lease property, which I would like to believe that in most circumstances will be the case for ijarah as well, because there must be reflection of fair value. Just a few more slides. Firstly, I would like to share and highlight to you, just for clarity, especially to again my learned fellow legal practitioners, we need to be aware that Bank Negara has issued a concept paper on ijarah. For those of you who have been in this market for quite a long time, you probably would recall that the first Syariah parameters on ijarah was issued by Bank Negara in 2009. It was never finalized. It was never finalized. Why? Because there are a lot of complications, there are a lot of issues with regard to practices, variation of practices in ijarah, which was taken into consideration, by Bank Negara, and as a result, they were unable to finalize the Syariah parameters. However, after further consultation with the market players in Malaysia, they have come up with this concept paper, which are more reflective of recent market practice. And one of the key term in that concept paper that we need to be aware of is the fact that it explicitly state as a mandatory requirement that asset in ijarah contract shall not include an asset which is debt in nature. So this goes back to my earlier explanation just now with regard to application of IAS 17 or FAS on finance lease. You can treat it as finance lease if the underlying asset is not debt in nature, but if the underlying asset is a finance asset which is debt in nature and therefore does not comply with ijarah, so you would not be able to comply with Bank Negara concept paper. So effectively, receivable or other financial asset cannot be used to underlie an ijarah transaction. All the other non-financial assets such as physical asset can be used. I wish to reiterate, in fact it is incorporated in the standardized document as well, that to comply with the requirement of Sharia, no penalty, compounding or interest is chargeable for default in rental payment other than the ta'wid or gharamah as permitted by Bank Negara for genuine costs. So this we need to be aware of and apply in the ijarah documentation. That is all from me. I wish to take this opportunity to thank you again for being a very prudent and loyal listeners. Before we conclude, I wish to open the floor for questions and answers. I'm sure we are short of time because we have already run out of our 1 hour, but you have my contact details there, you have the organizers' contact details there, so please feel free to also contact us should you have other questions in the future. But in the meantime, let's hear for questions for the next 5 to 10 minutes. Any question? No question? Everything crystal clear? Thank you very much then for listening. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.